to be, is to be an embassy of the kingdom. I want this church, I want this sanctuary to have kingdom language and kingdom culture and kingdom law, so that when we are living kingdom lives, we can come in out of a world that has nothing to do with kingdom language and kingdom law and kingdom culture, and come in here and we find that refreshment, right? We find fellowship. We find family here. And my worry is that if these are the sanctuaries, if these are the embassies, and increasingly these embassies are becoming more like the world, it ceases to be that place that's a blessing. We were made for these things. That's when Jesus says the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. We were made for that language and for that culture and that law. And what I dislike about a lot of our church services today is that our churches are kind of designed for not the followers of Christ, but for the rebels. They're places of sanctuary for people who are living in rebellion against Christ and His law. We kind of coddle and help those people who are living sorry Christian lives. Where I think it'd be better to keep it firm and holy, so that those who are living firm and holy lives can find fellowship there. Okay? Because it certainly can't be both. Well, the last point I want you to see in here is that our Sundays are also, I believe, without sermons. Let's look at verse 28. Consequently, the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath. What do I mean when I say our Sundays are without sermons? And this is true even for here, even though I'm the one writing and giving the sermons. What is Jesus saying when He tells the Pharisees, consequently the Son of Man is Lord even of the Sabbath? What He's saying is that I am the lawgiver. I wrote the idea of the Sabbath. Therefore, it's up to me to interpret it correctly. Okay. The Pharisees failed to understand that the one walking through these fields was the judge. Okay. He was the one who wrote the law. So he can certainly interpret it correctly. He doesn't need a Pharisaical lawyer to interpret the law that he wrote, right? And so he's saying, listen, I can cite David if you want, but I wrote this law. Okay. Let me explain it to you. And all I'm saying is that we have a lot of wonderful commentaries, and we have a lot of wonderful preachers and scholars and so on and so forth, who can give us a lot of insight into what these things mean. But I believe that Jesus is alive, don't you? And that the Holy Spirit is present here today. And that He is still able to do the interpretation Himself. But when a lot of our sermons are filled with things that are just the products of people's own personal study and understanding, we're not getting that. All we're getting is the Levitical, Pharisaical, scholarly study. But what they needed, was Jesus to be doing the preaching, to interpret His own law for them. Jesus is basically saying, let me explain it to you. For anybody who wants to do an interesting study, see what these lawyers did to this holiday to the Sabbath over the years. It's not really in our Bible here, but in the Talmud and Torah, you can look at all the laws they wrote about the Sabbath. It became the most overbearing and burdensome part of the Jewish life back then. They couldn't do anything on this day. And the whole idea of the Sabbath had been lost in the law. It's kind of like the way Madison Avenue has done to Easter today. You can barely figure it out anymore because of all that's been done to that day. It's hard to focus on the victory of life over death and the cross, but I guess that's what I'm saying. We need the Holy Spirit in residence here again to help explain these things to us. And so that's my idea of the Sabbath. I love that we have these services, but I know it's necessary for them. I know what we need to have to make them worthwhile. I do want this to be an embassy for the kingdom, and I do want us to have real singing here. Okay, real singing that's born of real love for what's going on. That we see this for the blessing that it is. I pray that we're having Sundays full of testimony. I pray that the time spent through Monday through Saturday is a time spent in trial and difficulty and struggle and conviction and endeavoring to do what the Lord would have us to do, so that we come back in here tired and exhausted in our spiritual battle, that we might be filled in here. That's what I want for us as a people. Okay? I want this to be a sanctuary. And I want there to be sermons here. So pray for me. That's the person who's charged with doing the preaching. Pray that as I'm back there in that study, that it be a study and not an office, and I'm really studying to see what the Lord would have to say to you, his people, and to me, so that we can hear from him. Okay. And I believe that the Sabbath then will be the blessing that it's supposed to be, and cease to be the law that we kind of don't really understand or know about.